This is Belinda. Belinda likes to ride her bike and has been bitten by the triathlon bug. But like many, she's new to it all and trying to figure it all out. You might remember that we recently brought Belinda in to help her with her swimming. Well, today, we're going to help her with her cycling. Well, more specifically, we're actually going to be getting her set up correctly on her bike so that she feels not only more comfortable, but also more powerful. Now, for a while now, Belinda has been tweaking her own bike position. I mean, I say tweaking, she's been changing things by the odd centimetre or two here or there, so quite drastic tweaks. So it's clear she's struggling to get the position right and get herself comfortable. So we want to help her once and for all. So we've come along to see Phil Burt, world-renowned bike fitter and physiotherapist, worked with some of the best cyclists, as you can see behind me, and triathletes in the world. Now, Phil is going to run through how to set up your bike, in particular for a triathlon bike, that will be useful to all of you. But we're going to be following Belinda and her journey because that's going to be interesting in itself. So I think it's time for me to step aside and hand on over to Belinda and Phil. Here we go.
Hi, Belinda. Yeah, so we're here today to understand what you want to try and do on a bike and match that. So what we're going to do first of all, I always say there's three parts to my bike first. First of all, what is the goal, right? So what do you want to achieve on the bike? You know, what problem are we trying to solve? And then second of all, then we have a look at you, put my physio hat on, nothing too invasive, but we look at those things that are important to achieving cycling comfort and performance, you know, so just off the bike, a quick examination. We then put you on the bike and we use a thing called Retalk, but it's just our measuring tape, you know, so it helps us understand, it gives a load of numbers and they're important to understand where you're at and where the opportunities are. I always say one thing at the beginning, right, you don't have to remember anything, so what we're going to do is we're going to email you a plan, all right, and the big thing is today, we're not going to change everything in one go, because if we do, we often don't know what's working, what isn't. So for me, it's all about the plan, right? And the big thing today is that you will understand loads of these because we try to make it not a passive process. In other words, I don't want to change anything about your setup unless you understand why it's happening and why we want to see how you feel with that, you know? And then you'll write it and feedback, all right? So without further ado, can you tell me what do you want to get out today?
So I've experienced quite a lot of niggles and stuff riding TT bikes. So I've only had my TT bike since March this year, and before that I was riding a road bike with clip-on aero bars, and I was going okay with the clip-on aero bars, and then switching over to that TT position I was never really got fully comfortable, so I was experiencing a lot of like hip pain and just feeling like I was super stretched out or could never really get the saddle in the right position or even know if the saddle was right for me. So it's just making sure that I'm comfortable and able to hold that position for the amount of time that I'll be riding.
That's good. So you've got hip pain, generally feeling discomfort, feeling clothed, jammed up, and you mentioned there, any saddle issues? Like have you had saddle pain? Or
not too much. No like saddle sores, but I know that sometimes I could be like too forwards on the saddle, so there's a lot of like numbness. It's quite painful if I do like a long ride in that TT position. It's just so sore that I can't actually like properly tilt my pelvis forward.
Got you. Next question would be, did you have any process of setting this bike up when you got the TT bike? Have you changed anything?
Yeah, so I think they've got a longer stem on it. Tried a couple of different saddles and experimented with tilting the saddle forwards, tilting it backwards. But yeah, never really seemed to get it right.
Nothing's never been that wonderful moment of smoking. Okay, have you got any injuries from other sports, previous lives, anything like that?
Really.
So you haven't had any broken legs, massively wonky? Good.
But I am really quite mobile.
You're quite mobile,
hips. Yeah, I've been to physios and the bike that I had previously, they're like, whoa. Like, it's quite impressive.
That's the interesting thing is that quite often as physios, we often always demonising people for being too stiff. Yeah. But what we'll have a look at, have anyone ever told you you're hypermobile?
Yeah.
Right, okay. So with great range comes the job of controlling it, you know? So that can be sometimes more, so it's not necessarily like if you ever meet like Olympic level track sprinters, they're stiff as anything because they run off stiffness, you know, so it's easy because it's easier to do than run off looseness. So, okay. All right, brilliant. So fairly clean bill of medical health. I reckon we move on to the next stage now, having a look at you, okay? So just, like nothing going on, like I say, just getting a good idea of you so now I can put you on the bike and I can understand what's going on.
Yeah.
And don't worry, I think there's a few things here that we probably haven't, some low-hanging fruit we haven't hoovered up yet, all right?
For sure.
All right, good stuff.
Cool.
Right, we'll move to that then. Right, Belinda, what I want you to do is just walk towards me and then walk back towards that corner of the room and then come back again. Well, all we're doing is having a look at how you walk. Don't try and do it right or wrong, just to walk away.
Shouldn't be too tricky.
And the reason why this is important is just get an idea of your foot progression angle. Perfect, and then walk away from me and walk back towards me. So what we can conclude is you're fairly normal, all right, in terms of like that. So come over and stand in front of me. Some people, for example, if you walk very much like a duck, that's going to be, that's when we have to consider pedal system, float a lot more and things like that. You know, so but you're fairly straight up and down, run of the mill. Can you have a stand now, just on your right leg? And I want you to do a mini squat up and down on that leg and just show me that. That's pretty good. Someone does the gym work. So we'll get an idea now is there's foot knee alignment, and then on the other leg for me. I just want you to have a squat down on that leg. Take time. Yeah, that's all right. Yeah. So it's harder on the left. Yeah. Yeah, and then down on this side. Good stuff. Brilliant. Okay. So, and you mentioned that you might be hypermobile, so we're going to take that into consideration. Fantastic. Just spin around now, face the wall behind us there, and if you could just bend forward and touch your toes in any fashion you want to, fantastic, and then come back up. Wow, that's good. I wish I was that flexible. Come and have a sit on the end of the bed now. Just shuffle right towards the end of the bed. And what we're going to do, something, first of all, is look at your hip flexibility.
Yeah.
All right, so I want you to grab the front of your left knee with both hands for me, Belinda. And I want you to have a lie down on your back now. All right, and then let me come in and take control. Fantastic. You can relax and let go now. So what we're looking at, first of all, is your hip flexion.
Yeah.
That's pretty good. Look at that, all right? So you've got good hip flexor range. And then what we do is look at the quad range in this position, and that's really good. So often those muscles can get tight in cyclists. And then we're just looking over this side. So as I can tell, we're dealing with a very flexible person. Take my hand, have a sit up now. Now, I want you to go all the way up the bed, all right? And relax down with your head up there. Good, fantastic. Looking for any massive asymmetry first of all, nothing too much there. I'm going to look at your hamstring range first. So just come in here, and that is wonderbar. And then here, and then you mentioned I've got really flexible hips, and wow, so you've got a huge amount of flexibility there. Most women do have, because most women have, it's not universally true, but generally between the sexes, slightly wider hips for the purposes of childbirth, and that's why yours go like that, whereas mine stops around about there. Which is bad. Good, so really flexible in there. Just looking at that, can you just take your middle finger and bend it back? Yeah, so you're hypermobile. That's the standard test. So
I can do all of like the thumbs and like got a wobbly
just
finger.
Show me your elbow. Ooh, okay. So with that mobility, how we talked about the hypermobility.
Yeah.
You have to control it though, right? So what we want to look at now, we're going to finish here, nothing untoward, loads of flexibility. I don't think you take any problems off the bike onto the bike. So it's even more interesting why you can ride a road bike relatively pain-free, but this TT bike isn't, all right? So we're going to understand that, all right? So we're going to have a look at, if you want to put your shoes on, and then we'll move to the bike, all right? Great, and if you have a look up here now, you can see that little blue man here. There's your knee trace, and then we get numbers dropping in here. Now, yellow means you're outside the retail thinks is average for someone on a time trial bike. Don't worry about that. That's for me to worry about. Certain numbers definitely want to be green, and some other numbers sometimes there could be real reasons. But there you are. That's you cycling. You actually lift your hand and wave. You can see it's you as well. Hello, there you are. All right, great. So if you can just keep them there, I want you to look up. Imagine you're looking up the road. Yeah. You won't believe how many great time trial positions have been set looking at the floor, which is a big mistake, because then they look up and you go, it's very different. Right, fantastic. You're doing brilliant there for me. Right, you ready for this is the biggest fun bit of the day, but then again, I am nearly 50 years old. So we are going to rotate you all the way around. Right, the whole platform rotates. Are you ready?
Whoa.
Right, and there you go. And we come around and say hi to the cameraman there. Okay. And I'm just going to capture this side now in exactly the same fashion, all right?
Okay.
Lovely. Okay, I'm going to rotate you around to face the mirrors again, okay? You ready?
Yeah.
Here comes the fun. Okay, just have a sit up there now. Now, what we're going to do next is get some saddle pressure. Now, I think saddle pressure isn't always to do with having saddle sores. What I want to do is see where you're sitting on that saddle, what position it is. So we'll do that whilst you're on the bike, and then what we're going to do is get you off the bike.
Cool.
And then the last thing the retail system does is quite cool. You can digitally measure the bike. So
Yeah.
that's really good because we have all that data then. And then what we're going to do is me and you're going to bring that all together, and we're going to chat through it and what it means and what we can change today, what we can change in it long term, and what the plan should be, all right? And understand how you feel. Loads of data in here, which is really important, but there's three numbers that are really important in any bike position, time trial road, is saddle height, angle, and setback, yeah? So the good news is your saddle height 704, you've got your nosy saddle ever so slightly down, which is great, all right? And the saddle setback's quite far forward, right? So that's normal for a time trial bike. What does all that really mean? Well, let's go in here, have a look at what we call your poise data. So these are all your joint angles. So I'm just gonna put the left on the left and the right on the right, so it's easier for us to interpret, all right? And what you see when you come in here, so lots and lots of data. Don't worry about the yellow, as I mentioned, right? But first thing I know is maximum knee extension. That is how straight or bent your knee is at the bottom of the pedal stroke. For me, engine room of cycling, the most important power production, good. You've got a good saddle height on this, right? So it's green, it's in the middle of the numbers. Most people get that wrong to start with. But when we come down here, we start to see, and remember, you've been mentioning that I just don't feel comfortable.
Yeah.
I'm gonna put you back on the bike and show you that vision in a second, but your hips are quite closed and your hip angle range is quite a lot. So your hips are moving around a lot and they're very, very closed up at the moment. And we'll look at that, what that means visually, right? So that sort of fits with what you're feeling, all right? Your back angle is 19 and 21, all right? That's pretty good, right? So this is not a non-aero bike, you know? So not unsurprising, and you're adapting into it. So you're not sitting massively upright. Shoulder to elbow angle, quite an important marker to me. A little bit stretched out, and I'll show you what that means in a second. And then what we get down here is that the knee forward of foot, which used to be the old plumb line measure to make sure you don't get anterior knee pain. In a time trial position, it can be quite far forward because that's what the inline seat tube allows you to achieve. And you just really aren't coming anywhere near as far forward as people normally do, but there's a reason for that, all right? And we're going to come to that in a minute, right? In other words, it's saying even though your setback's minus 13, your knee forward foot suggests that you're being forced to sit a bit further back, all right, overall. And then when we come down here, we often see a bit of asymmetry in the knee travel and tilt. Now, do you remember off the bike, you were really good at a single leg squat on your right knee, but not so good on your left. And this is where we see your knee travel tilt. That's how tilted when you see somebody really moving in and out. Is really it's fine on the right. It's just a bit more. Your left leg's moving around a lot more. Do you find that when you're cycling? Do you think your left knee or leg moves around a lot more than your right? Might not be aware of it.
I feel like my left leg's a lot more comfortable actually, and my right leg never really feels like it's in the right place.
So often the reason for this might be someone having a slight functional leg length difference, so from open up. But I think we can make it all better with just a couple of changes, all right? So if we go back on the bike now, before I finish, saddle pressure. Wow. So you are sitting. That red line is the average of the center of pressure regression. That's often like in a road cycle, it'd be really wide if someone's unstable. So you mentioned sometimes you don't get saddle sores, but you pick up numbness. This is the reason why, is that all the pressure is very central and very, very concentrated in one area. Now, that is time trialing. That is not a problem. It's just whether we've got that. You can see there, you can imagine after 2-3 hours of all being in one place compared to being shared out in a lot of places. So what we have to think about is, at the moment, you're riding a slight gap saddle, right, which is fine. That is more of a road saddle though. So it doesn't have maybe the best sort of material to deal with what we're doing here. But that's what you're here for today, to discover what the best things are to do. So the overall headline is, it isn't a terrible position. It's actually not a bad time trial biking position. But I think we've basically got the handbrake on in a couple of places and helping us achieve comfort and performance. So if we pop you back on now, is that all right? When you're here, all right, and looking down there, I want you to come all the way to top dead center on this leg, and stop there, right? Now, do you see how closed your hip is on this side?
Yeah, it feels quite painful to hold actually.
Yeah, and it's ridiculous. So you're missing. You've got a huge dead spot over the top where you wouldn't be producing power. If we had like put you on the SRM rig with real kinematics and that, we'd see that you're missing out on this big extension bit. So the whole point of having a time trial bike is really to weaponize, the biggest, strongest muscle in your body, which is your gluteus maximus. And at the moment, it's really tight. It's also probably the reason why you're feeling really uncomfortable on the bike. And also, I think the crank length is forcing you to sit quite far back with all the pressure concentrated at the front because it's the only place you can handle it and cope with it.
Yeah.
So that's really limiting you, and I think it will limit your breathing. Now, most people who had this would get off the bike and would feel really stiff getting into run. I think your beautiful gift of being hypermobile means you don't feel that, but it doesn't mean it's optimal, and it doesn't mean that you're best on the bike. And it's the hypermobility as well is the reason why so your hip lateral travel is just within the normal ranges about. I reckon if we put you on this after an hour and a half of cycling, I think you'll be moving around a hell of a lot.
Yeah.
And that's what I think resonates with you. You're also, because the crank length is so big for you on this bike, when you're back here, you're almost having to absorb it back there, so you can't come forward and up and over, and that's why your shoulder at the moment is behind your elbow.
Yeah.
And ideally, in good time trial position, I'd like you there, so come up a bit higher, like that, because that decreases the workload. Now, if you look up now, that feels easier a bit, doesn't it? Yeah. But at the moment, you're stuck back there, right? So if we have a sit up, the big two things that are problematic with your thing is the crank length is completely blocking you from achieving the position you want to. All right? And then I would say, until we change that, you're actually, we're on a complete loss leader trying to find the right saddle. Right? I do think there's a better saddle. There are definitely quite a few options out there. What we need to talk about is the saddle type and the width and size. Because you're in the time trial position, really the width of the back isn't important, it's more the front. I know you've experimented around, but it's almost unfair to change a saddle at the moment and make a judgment on it because this complicates it. Does that understand? Now, I know you don't trust me, right? But I'm afraid to try, but 170 it's just way too long to do. So the decision is whether we go 165 or 160, right? Now, how tall are you?
168.
I would go 160. Because let's make a big difference, Your saddle height, when we do that, if you come down to the bottom of the centre here, when we change crank length, this is my method of doing it, we want to open up the hip at the top, So when this crank length shrinks 10 mil, right, which doesn't sound a lot, but it's massive. We're going to raise the saddle height because you had a really good saddle height. So we want to maintain that, So that'll bring you into an even better, quite low aero position. I think your back and hypermobility mean that you'll be able to handle that. And then we'll be able to optimize that saddle position. And then what I would suggest we do is change crank length first and adapt the saddle height, and for keeping the tilt the same and where it is, because they're quite good. And then you need to ride that. And tell us how you feel. All right? Comparing apples with apples. Nothing else has changed, So you can brilliantly tell me, this feels different, Phil. This is what feels different. This is what feels better. This is what feels worse. So sometimes, right? Because there is some maybe fettling in to do that. At which point, maybe you ride that for 2-3 weeks, We then talk about saddle, all right? And that's what we'll go into now as well. I'll bring some saddles here and explain why they're going to work better, okay? Bearing in mind, let me just look. So we've got that pressure there, and I don't think, where you are here. So once we change crank length and we understand how you're feeling with that, I think that will feel much better. A lot of the hip pain will go away. And I think you'll probably feel better on the saddle because the total peaks will go down because you won't have to push. But it's then whether we've got the right saddle on here for you. Now, you can ride a road type of saddle at the front. What we can see is you are literally dumping pressure very centrally, that's fine. It's very performance oriented. So I think what we go for then is a few different things. You've got your classic split nose. These are never work on the road if you ask me, but very good at time trial because they have that cutaway where the pressure can be distributed and you distribute the pressure and the nose moves independently. But then you've got your more like just a slight cutaway saddle like this one, where that may well help relieve that pressure in there and distribute it better to the outside, right? Or you could go for a classic just short nose saddle which has a softer nose.
Oh, that is very soft.
So when I think you have the signs of being like this is what you expect from a pro athlete. So it's good to hear that. but and that is where you should be sitting in a time trial position. But I just don't think we've probably got the optimal kit for you to ride 100 plus miles on that, so you would so if you had something that was nice, either a gap or a nice a more supportive material at the front of the saddle, and what we can do is guide you through that about finding that right thing. But until we change crank length, in my opinion, we are literally that process is completely flawed because we're trying to make the saddle work with something else that isn't right yet. And the reason why you got your pelvis there. On a road bike, you sit on your sit bones here, you're rotated forward because the back's so flat, and that's why you're on your pivot rami. So we just need the right thing to find to match that in there, all right? So you can rotate forward all the way forward and into the nose, and then get on with the job of riding as hard and fast as you want without thinking about all the aches and pains that have been causing it. So the overall message and story here today is, I think what would be really good is if you could go away and change crank length, and I can email you exactly the plan to do with your saddle position once you've done that, saddle height, tilt and setback. And then if we can catch up either by email or phone call, and you can tell me how you feel with that, and what that meant, and then we can judge what that response is. Remember, the human being in the middle here is the thing that reacts differently every time. I'd be amazed if you don't react positively, but we'll see what happens. And then basically, if that's the handbrake on the car at the moment, right? Once that's released, I think you'll normalise into a good position, all right? And then we choose the right saddle, maybe going forward, right? You might tell me, I don't feel the saddle anymore now. I can stick on that one. But let's judge it apples for apples, each time.
Sure thing. Cool.
But the good news is, it's not a terrible position. I just think you've got a couple of bits that need tweaking, and these are very common bits, all right?
Yeah, okay.
Does all that make sense?
Yeah, for sure.
Alrighty, all right. And you'll know pretty quickly, all right?
Yeah.
But you can ride as long as you want before you need to feed back to me, all right?
Cool.
So some people will know within one ride.
Yeah.
Some people need 2-3 weeks. Some people need 2-3 months, right?
Cool.
I think you'll know, because this is at the moment causing you quite a bit of discomfort at times.
Yeah.
You'll know pretty quickly.
Yeah.
My one caveat to all that is, no matter how good it feels, I do not want you to ride for 4 hours on the first time on it, all right? Okay? I can't believe you did 120 miles on this on the first time, right? Only because we might make things a load better, but we don't know whether the rest of the body needs to catch up with that, all right? Especially with you and your hypermobility, all right?
Yeah.
But you give me hypermobility, I reckon with cycling, being a fixed position sport, if we get everything optimal, we should be happy days.
Yeah.
All right?
Perfect.
Fantastic.
Thank you so much.
Should we do that then?
Yeah, let's
Fantastic,
crack on.
all right, fantastic.
Well, Belinda, your first ever bike fit on a triathlon or TT bike, how was it?
Yeah, good. I feel like I learnt quite a lot through it that I didn't really know beforehand in comparison to like a bike fit on a road bike. So yeah, it was really interesting actually.
Yeah, and I think what was interesting is he didn't suddenly start changing loads of things for you.
Yeah.
I mean, Phil is an expert, so it was quite interesting to see him at work there. But interestingly, the main thing that he focused on for you were on far too long a crank length, right? So you're obviously going to go away now, myself included actually. It turns out that we're both on far too long a crank length, so we're going to play around with the shorter crank length, and then from there we can tweak things. But you did do a little bit on the front end for you, didn't you?
Yeah, just bringing it up a tiny bit actually made quite a big difference. I'm really looking forward to that, plus the crank length should feel like a new bike,
you instantly
hopefully.
just looked a lot more relaxed as soon as you brought the front end up, so that's quite cool. So stay tuned, because I think there's going to be more on this one.
For
but
sure.
I think this is this is quite important to sort of take away from this. With any bike fit, you shouldn't go in expecting this miracle answer or formula from one session. This is something that should be incremental. You work on, you figure out things, and then go from there rather than change everything at once.
Yeah.
One variable at a time.
Yeah.
So yeah, awesome. Well, thanks ever so much for tuning in. Really interesting to just see Phil at work there. Thank you again, obviously, to Phil Burt for his time helping us out. And yeah, stay tuned. I think there's more to come from Belinda. If you enjoyed today's video, please give it a thumbs up, give it a like. See you next time.